First couple of slides, Rachel is just going to give a little introduction to the HDRC and where we're at and why we're here, sort of thing, and then we'll pick up from slide 3 on who myself and Jen are.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Nicola and Jen. So welcome everyone. It's great to see so many of you here. So my name is Rachel Summerhill. I'm the Senior Organisational Development Business Partner working on the HDRC. So it's the Health Determinants Research Collaboration in South Tees. So it runs across both local authorities, so both Redcar and Middlesbrough. There are quite a few of the HDRC team on the call today that I can see. If you are in the team, could you just give us a wave? Using the reaction just so people know you're here and who you are. So I won't give any formal introductions, but there are people here today from the team. So we are really thrilled to start to roll out and develop this training and development programme, which is specifically with LA colleagues, local authority colleagues, elected members in mind. So we're absolutely really excited to start this with this first session, which is research and you. So it's an introduction to research, essentially. So we are constantly developing and progressing with this offer. So I will leave a little evaluation feedback survey towards the end of the session, and it's really key and valuable for us to have your contributions in feedback for how we can develop these programs, because it is for you. So we, as part of the HDRC, a massive component of it is to leave something that's sustainable and that you can dip in and out of with regards to utilising research and using it to make better decisions within the local authorities. So it will be something that will be always around, but we'll be developing it constantly. We're here till 2028, so it's a 5-year programme. There's 30 of these HDRCs that run across the country, so we have lots of support, and it's funded by the NIHR, who are the National Institute for Health and Care Research. There is another slide, Nicola, if you can go to the next slide for me, that just kind of explains what the HDRC is for anyone that needs that information. But we will be sharing the slides. That's quite a wordy slide. So as always, if you'd like to reach out and know more, then we're all here. We do have a dedicated inbox as well that you can reach out to us on and a contact form, but I'll give you all of that information towards the end of the session. So I'll pass you over to Jen and Nicola to start, and thanks very much to everyone.
Thank you so much, Rachel. So we wanted to really introduce who we were on quite a personal level as well, because we understand from the scope and what we're trying to achieve here that there's going to be a variety of different individuals with a variety of different experiences. So myself, firstly, I'm a lecturer at Teesside University in leadership. However, that hasn't always been my background. My background is that I spent 10 years in the public service, in the fire service specifically, operationally. So I have lived experience. I also have branched out and dipped my toe into some different enterprises and working with a variety of different people across the country. Within research and my role at Teesside, I very much look at team performance and leaders' actions upon team behaviour. And I am partway through my PhD, which is looking at how leadership is enacted and how people really embody the role of a leadership, either intentionally or unintentionally. So hopefully I can bring a bit of my previous life and current life into some of these training sessions and help in that way.
Thanks, Nicola. So hi, everybody. I'm Jen Hagan, and I'm in the business school working with Nicola. And I'm a principal lecturer for staffing and resources, which is quite a misleading title, I'll admit. I'm part academic, so teaching and learning, working with international partners, but part behind the scenes, as I suppose you could say, in human resources. But my background is in cultural heritage in the widest description of that. So including the natural environment. That's does anybody know where that is? If you did, I'd be absolutely amazed, but I was just curious. It's a San Martin bank, and it was quite a big deal that we did it Courton Marsh when I was working for a wildlife trust. So my background's in not-for-profits and very much in a development role. So pretty much being a jack of all trades in that: marketing, finance, sustainability, fundraising, events, all of that sort of thing. But subject-wise, research-wise, as well as voluntary sector stuff, I'm looking at organisational behaviour, well-being and tourism and events in that. And my PhD, completed far too many years ago, was in volunteer management and impact. So that's kind of where I'm coming from: public sector, voluntary sector, and lots of roles in between that. So we're just switching control between ourselves, forgive me. Takes a little bit of time. So we are here to help the HDRC with a bigger mission of culture change, and hopefully to help all of you along a journey. You might all be at different starting points on that journey around making evidence-based decisions and things being more research informed. So we're here as partners with the HDRC through Teesside Uni, and we deliver training and education and consultancy through the business school all the time, but we also conduct research in the background of that. Sometimes with students, sometimes with staff, sometimes independently, sometimes with external partners, and with a lot of different outputs and outcomes that are intended around that. We're here to help emphasise and recognise the people at the centre of that research that hopefully you're all going to go out and conduct now, that you'll probably be doing anyway, and that's a key message as we go through today. But also emphasising the importance of the research itself and it being valuable and credible, and really the weight of that research in terms of what it's possible to achieve through that. And that's kind of the driving force behind the training plan that we've designed, which we'll give you a little bit of a taster of today. So we're not releasing the full training plan because we want it to be iterative. We want it to be based on everybody's needs and on the feedback that we're getting. And we've dropped into a sandpit with Redcar Council a few weeks ago, and that was really interesting. It's given us a good couple of ideas. Sorry, Rachel, go on.
Sorry to interrupt, Jen. I think we're having to move the slides forward ourselves.
Oh no!
I don't think they're moving automatically. So I don't know if we might need to unshare and share. You know what Teams is like.
Sorry.
It's just it's giving us the option to toggle at the bottom to move backwards and forwards, but yeah, it's not doing it as you're doing it, so we're not seeing that.
Sorry, shall
Don't
I say
worry.
when I'm moving on to the next
Is
slide?
that
Because if I come out and go back in, it
yeah,
might
that
well
would
go
be great.
wrong.
Thank you. Thanks.
Sorry, everyone.
No,
I've not
don't
come
worry.
across
Sorry,
that
which
before.
slide are we up to then?
We're up to training opportunities and approach, which is slide 5. Oh, sorry, everyone. Fab. You all okay? Brilliant. So how we will be operating is going to be based on our experiences and your experiences, and we won't just be connecting with you through these training sessions. There's going to be a whole toolkit around this, and there'll be opportunities hopefully for us to meet some of you and talk about your research ideas in more depth. But as far as the training plan goes, we've designed it around being very available and very accessible. So we're talking about different times, different formats, different faces that you'll see, not just us. We've also taken a staged approach to it. So we've got the introductory stage, which is we're going to be looking at turning a thought into an idea and then into a researchable question, basically. What research actually is, the process, the point of it, and what counts as evidence. Then you've got intermediate, which will be sessions and resources. some recorded, some not recorded, so you can dip in and out. And that will be around the fundamentals of designing and conducting research, things like the ethics process, looking at different kinds of data, why they would be important in particular situations, how you manage that data and how you analyse it, of course. And then we'll move on to a leadership phase, which is not just for anyone who is in a leadership position already. It might be because you've gone through all of the sessions with us and done your own research in the background and you feel ready to lead a piece of research, because it can get quite big. You can end up with a team of researchers underneath you. But in that stage, we'll be looking at not just leading research, but what you can do with it. So how you can make political influence, generate new partnerships, bring in funding, managing high performance teams and that sort of thing. Everything that we do is practice based, and that's where me and Nicola have come from. And that's how we teach. That's just what we're used to doing. And we'd love to work with you to get examples that resonate with you to help us demonstrate theory, I guess, that we're talking about around research process. So we'll try and bring in relatable and local examples. We'll be responsive, as I've already mentioned. We'll focus on maximum impact and minimum effort and resources. Now, we'll come back to that in a second, but we do understand that there are barriers around this. And we'll be emphasising the value of reflection as well, which is incredibly important for yourselves and for the development of research. Okay, I'm moving on to the next one, which is a sea of wonderful faces. So just to give you a very quick taster of who you might hear from on the programme and in what ways. Thank you, Nicola. Slide 6. So we've got, I'll work from the top left. We've got Charlotte Nicola in the top left there. She's our Associate Dean for Research and Knowledge Exchange, just an amazing personality who can talk to you about taking research to the next level around getting funding in, working with external partners. We've also got Dr. John Gray, who's next along there at Leeds. He's a teaching fellow in sport education and management. He's going to talk about coaching and managing teams. We've got Anna Hayes, who's going to talk to you about evaluation of projects and services. She's in our School of Psychology. She's exceptional. We've got Rebecca Scott, who some of you will be familiar with, who's the South Tees Public Health Principal, and she's going to talk about health policies, health in all policies. And then at the bottom there, looking very serious. He doesn't always look like that, but that's his official mugshot. I have to say his full title, he is Professor, Double Professor John Blenkinsop. He is quite amazing, not least because with all of those accolades and all of those publications, he is one of the nicest people you could ever meet. And I can say that because he was my Director of Studies way back when, and I'm still working with him now, and he's just an absolute joy to work with, and he's very happy to help on this programme, thankfully, because you can imagine how much in demand he is. And he will hopefully be talking to you about how to report and publish your work in various ways. So that he's an exceptional voice. So we're very lucky. And lots of other people as well who I haven't mentioned. So far we've got 28 activities. We're going to pull a real toolkit together that involves, as I said, recorded and live sessions, because we want to be interactive as well at key points. We're going to pull glossaries of terms together. We're going to pull walkthrough videos together, just so that if you want to take that stage process with us from A to B, wonderful, but you can also dip in and out. You know, there's off the shelf stuff and you can come at it when you need it. So going on to slide 7 now, and I'm handing over to Nicola.
I was really quite forceful there. I just ripped control off her.
You did?
No taking involved. So we've spoken so far about where we're going for today, and on the appreciation of how many different people we've got on the call today and where we are in the starting point. We're very much an introductory session. So today's session, we're going to try and look at maybe challenging some perceptions around research as a term itself. What are we saying, meaning? Is it as exciting or scary as it might originally seem? It might be a term that you're used to. It might be a term that you're thinking, you know it as a different name. We're going to try and have a little look at your own experiences and what it is that's in your mind right now on day one. Try and make some connections and have a look at some of the commonalities. Hopefully, Jen and I have presented ourselves as human beings and we can already see that commonality and perhaps some of our shared backgrounds. But what else exists perhaps in how we're operating or how we're being in the world? We'll move on. We're on slide 8. Research itself is a term that comes with baggage, and by that there is books and books upon research, and there are lots of different voices to be heard in this area, and there's lots of different competing and sometimes conflicting opinions around research. But what we're going to try and do is have a bit of an unpack of it and see where it is that it's needed for you. Obviously, we've come in with a huge ambitious idea of implementing research and doing research and being evidence informed and all of this, but where are we currently at today? Is it something that you're already doing or using or would like to be doing? And what have you identified in this area that's brought you along really onto the call today? So we'd like to be able to hear some voices, if that's okay. If any of you were willing to maybe participate and we'll ask some questions and see what your responses are, just to try and see if there are some commonalities and what we're understanding. So I'll move onwards. We're on slide 9. And this is very much an open floor. If discussions are taking a long time, that's fabulous and we'd love that, but I'll make sure they're captured elsewhere. But if there was some voices and you would be happy to unmute yourselves, what do you think about research? What are your views informed by? And indeed itself, the term research, is it something that you think is the appropriate term? Is there an alternative that you would rather be using? What's shaping your views here? And of course, if nobody would like to respond or answer, then that's absolutely fine. There's also the chat section if it's not appropriate for you to unmute to answer. Yes, Mark?
I was just thinking of it in my own head as it's about making new knowledge and trying to come up with answers to problems you encounter in your working life. And sometimes you can come up with answers by looking at work other people have done. But if you're looking at it particularly in a local setting, the existing research that you can find by searching for it doesn't always apply to the population you're working with. So you might need to do something new. So that's what I think of it as, is filling a knowledge gap that you've identified that you couldn't fill elsewhere by looking at work other people have already done.
Yeah, amazing. And a really nice blend of terminology used there as well, because I think we'll come on to it, but sometimes that identifying a knowledge gap gets bandied about. And what we're really meaning is, oh, I really wanted to find something and there wasn't anything there that I thought was usable for my situation, especially as practitioners. And thank you so much for being the first voice as well. That's always a big one. So thank you. We've had...
I think it's really interesting what Mark's just said about new knowledge, because I think that brings a little bit of fear along with it, even though we know when we dig behind that actually a lot of it is what you said, you're sort of building upon what's gone before. It being a researcher and doing research doesn't necessarily mean you have to go out and discover something scientific that nobody's ever uncovered or something startling that's going to make the Lancet. And that doesn't make it any less valuable either. And yet sort of new knowledge and contribution to knowledge, Nicola will be chuckling here because these phrases are things that we hear quite a lot. And And I think we do need to sort of unpack those and break them down a little bit and take the anxiety out of them a little bit, because often the most small scale pieces of research that just draw together everything that other people have done in that area can be the most impactful.
Absolutely. There's been a couple more on the chat as well. We've had Laura saying research is essential for advancing knowledge, solving problems and improving outcomes. Good. Research is systematic, evidence-based and helps us make informed decisions. And we've had James with the analytical gathering of information/data to inform decision making. Just some great answers. Absolutely. We'll see if there's anyone else who would like to contribute, or if we're happy to move on, I'll move on. That's great. We'll stick with using the term research then for the moment, and I'll move on to slide 10. So slide 10, we've got that really good understanding of what it is, why we're doing it, what do we want to achieve from research. How do we go about it? There are many, many skills when it comes to being a researcher, and many skills that get brought up. There is a variety of terminologies, again, that might be used. And sometimes what we find is quite difficult when it comes to practitioner-based. And forgive me if for any of those who are sat there thinking, absolutely not, I'm already at a very expert level. But when we take it right back down, sometimes we find that there is an awful lot of language that gets used that can sometimes be put up as a bit of a barrier towards entry into research, or how we might be using it. And typically it comes from how and why that research has been done and what it has been hoping to achieve. There is, of course, lots and lots out there that has been conducted because of funding or investment, or because of a purpose that might be different to why we're wanting to use the research. It can contain a high level of scientific precision, and it might be something that we think is a reason to disregard research, but it's not actually. When we take it down, it's not something that is essential for conducting research, or indeed for being able to use research to make those evidence-based decisions. What we do know, so we're looking at slide 11, and we're moving towards trying to figure out this common or commonalities between us. We have this understanding that research is central towards both business and academic activities. So whilst we might see some of the scientific jargon, we might see some of the academic terminology that isn't represented in the workplace in business, it doesn't mean that they're so far apart from each other. We don't have this general consensus of how it should be defined, and yet we still all have an understanding that we can use it and it is relevant to ourselves and we can conduct it. How we might be conducting it and the skills needed. So slide 12. There is no such thing as an absolutely perfect researcher. It is a person, an individual who is made up of a characteristics of a variety of different elements. And these things are what you will be doing. You will be doing in the workplace. You will be either consciously doing them or unconsciously doing them. We have taken the understanding that in your practice, what you are doing align with some of these skills, and therefore we believe you're already in a position to be either taking our sessions to develop further, or taking our sessions to be able to be getting an introduction towards research. We look towards Saunders, and this is where it's lovely to see some of your answers from earlier around creating this understanding, because Saunders themselves have said and brought in this awareness about systematically working. So we understand that we might be looking for an answer we don't yet know. We understand that we have some of those skills that can enable us to find an answer. What are we now turning into something that is really credible that we can class under this research term? We're looking at being able to do things systematically, gathering our data and interpreting that data to provide us with an answer to a question or an objective that we had set at the beginning. So we can see that whilst it is a broad field that we're looking at, there is a variety of different approaches. We can start to get some guidelines and some boundaries between how we're going to be working. What we might see as being research and the options that might be coming into play, which is our slide 14, consist of a variety of different things. We don't just mean looking at academic journal articles or producing journal articles. We can see that they're brought in from consultations, from bids and commissions, investigations. There are surveys and literature reviews and indeed case studies. And it might be that you're already working in an area which is directly related to one of these things, or you are sat there thinking, I can see areas that would be overlapping. And as we progress on our training delivery course, we're going to explore these in further detail, and we're going to be able to bring in quite a few different areas for examples of seeing where these might be overlapping. What is quite important at this stage, as we're getting our understanding and awareness going, is to have a bit of a consideration about what research isn't. So we are looking towards Wallyman. We're on our slide 15, and what we're putting some boundaries in place. We're saying, on the basis of where we've been so far in our understanding, it's not just a process of collecting facts and information. And it's not going to be something that we're going to start throwing around and using in terminologies to say, oh, this might be a way of being able to get noticed. It's going to be for a purpose that is much larger than that. Hopefully. So on to slide 16. Hopefully along our journey, so with the training, with our commonalities between us, we're going to be able to get to a position where it's research with you. We've been really conscious when we've been brought in that we don't want to feel that this is something that's being imposed on you, because you are practitioners yourself and what you're doing is fantastic. So we want to be able to be conducting and enabling research with you, looking at very much your ideas and bringing your voices in on the journey. There is, of course, lots and lots that Rachel and her team of colleagues have put in place to be able to support, and there are a variety of different routes to be able to go down. Rachel is going to be sharing those details further if you haven't yet got them. And therefore, when we move forward with our training, we're going to be dipping in and being able to signpost different areas to get to. But very much we're conscious that we want that this is something that is done with and not to you. And hopefully I've made it sound really sellable and it all sounds fantastic, and we're ready, we're keen to go as we're sat here on our 1 hour lunch break in a very, very busy working world. Therefore, it would be completely remiss of me not to identify this slide before handing back over to Jen. So we're on slide 17. You are all practitioners and you are all curious and passionate about your jobs and what it is that you've been asked to do as part of your roles. Therefore, we would like to identify straight at this point that what we know, there are numerous different barriers. There is our jargon, there is terminologies, there is who is conducting what. And one of the largest that we've seen is this perception and this idea of time. And we are very, very conscious of this. There is a beautiful paper, and if anyone is interested, we can put the link there for you. A beautiful paper that's looking at curiosity, and research itself involves being a curious individual. We are indeed. We're trying to find an answer to something we don't yet know. So we're curious individuals, but the perception of time has an impact on how we see that curiosity. Is it a happy anticipation that we don't yet know the answer to something and we want to go out and squirrel away and find that answer and be able to conduct something meaningful? Or indeed, is time so pressed and short that actually it's a really cruel frustration, we don't yet know the answer to something and we're panicking because we can't yet find and be able to allocate time towards it? We think it's really important to bring that in right now, because we do appreciate that over the training session, not every single session is going to be relevant for everyone. But what we'd really like to do is make it so that your really precious time can be used in a way that's meaningful, and you can pick up what is needed for you. Barriers overcome. I'm going to turn to slide 18, and I'm going to hand back over to Jen.
Thank you. It's really interesting, that paper, actually. There's a link in that slide if we share the slides afterwards to the paper, but it's kind of a case in point in that those authors have only just in 2017 come along and published a paper that reveals that aspect around curiosity. They're standing on the shoulders of a huge amount of research that already exists around curiosity as a concept and where that comes from and where it can lead to, but nobody had actually looked into what might be a barrier to that and how people perceive that. So that's exactly the kind of thing that we're talking about, not necessarily on that level. Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Amanda. I can access it. That's brilliant. So what's the point of it then? Especially given that we know that time might get in the way. Well, we just thought we'd try and pull together, although there are a huge amount of options out there. You've just seen an example of a lot of them, but that isn't the full range by any extent. There are some really creative methods out there that we can explore, lots of new things coming out all of the time. The pretty standard stuff can kind of be encapsulated into 4 key groups. So these are some of the things that you might actually do. We'll come back to this in a few weeks in more depth in one particular session. But for now, you can see that none of these are any more valuable than the other. They all just have a purpose and a right situation. So you've got basic research, which is probably done more than anything else to understand something further or to explain something further. And naturally, that kind of research is more descriptive than it is analytical. And we said earlier that research is not a collection of information without any interpretation. And that's really key here. Even though it is descriptive, basic research, it's not too analytical. It still has to be interpreted in a particular way to count as research. So you have to do something with it, basically. It's not just about collecting a bunch of data together. Data on its own is pretty meaningless. So that's about exploring what happens if, or what is this particular idea about? How does this work? Then you've got applied research, which is about helping people understand the nature of human problems, big human problems, so that they can more effectively control their environment. So it's applied research, I suppose. A simple way of looking at it is that it's the opposite to research for research's sake. It's not just discussion papers around concepts that people like to think about. It has to have a reason for being, and it has to have some kind of impact. Evaluation research is something that you may have heard more and more about, as something that's been encouraged right across sectors. The more that we deliver particularly short-term projects as opposed to services that we used to just expect. We came up with an idea, we rolled with it, and it went on forever. Even in that case, there still has to be some room for working out whether it's working, on where the opportunities for continuous development are, continuous improvement, and actually being able to pin down whether what you intended in the first place is what's coming off at the end, and is that working for everybody in the same way. So evaluation research can be incredibly valuable no matter what context, really. And it can usually be around to judge the effectiveness of something. It's a bit bigger than that, and Dr. Anna Hayes will talk to you about that in a few weeks' time, and how to actually do that in a really robust way. But it doesn't just have to be about a service or a project. It can be about implementation of a policy, or it can be about a new product that's being developed, or just sort of in development if you're trialing something. So there's lots of opportunities through evaluation. And action research is really interesting because it's a circular process. So it is about solving problems, again, within programs or organisations or communities. So the drivers might be the same, but the structure for action research is it has to come back around on itself. So if you're planning to implement something, you've got the opportunity at work to start something off. Doing a piece of action research basically means you also see it through and then analyse what the impact of that was. So that's the kind of circular approach to research. But then at the same time, we could still be coming back to the question, why would we do this, especially if we know that time is a barrier? We know that there's a lot of work can be involved in this sort of thing. Not always. What's the real value of it? So I'm going to move on to slide 19, which is the overspilling coffee cup. And at a really sort of top level, capturing evidence about the impact of research is actually really hard. And obviously that's really ironic as well. So you can capture research excellence very easily. There are frameworks around that. And having that underpinning research will help ensure that it does have the impact. But because lots of the impact research has, in whatever context, it's quite indirect. So it's hard to really measure what the true positive and perhaps negative outcomes of that might be. And as I said earlier, it's not just having the data, it's what you do with it that counts. And RISE did some research into this and found that research in general has up to 8 times the return on public investment. And they also found this spillover effect, that the economic benefits stretch far beyond the organisations that perform research. So we kind of think of, particularly in businesses, that they have a research and development department. That would be very nice to have. And that all of the benefits of that are held within that company. As protective as they may be of things like intellectual property and all of that, it's just not true, because it affects the individuals who conduct that research on a personal and professional level. And there is all sorts of spillover, economic and social, and perhaps environmental as well, that just probably isn't being recognised or documented. So that RISE research said that the existence of spillovers also places a focus on the importance of absorptive capacity, which is the ability of any firm, any organisation, to recognise, assimilate and apply new information. So essentially, it's not just having the data, it's what you can do with it that counts. And what the lovely part about the HDRC partnership and all of us coming together in this is that, you know, we're going to be putting research on the map and, you know, trying to demonstrate that we can do this together with a limited amount of time, because nobody's going to be coming along and taking work off us to perform this research until it gets to a certain level. And we're going to help with that cause. So your local authorities will have a greater ability to recognise and assimilate and apply the new information the more that we generate that, and the more that we do it, and the more that we shout about how important it is and the value. Okay, so slide 20. Drilling a bit further down into that, that was about impact of research generally. Public sector research has been found to have an impact on, a positive impact on productivity. It stimulates private sector research as well. And it's been found that doing things on a local level absolutely matters. It's not that doing something in Redcar won't influence anything outside of Redcar. In fact, the very nature of the HDRC would mean that it would go further than that. But even in general, public sector research across the UK has been found to influence things at regional, national and global levels. So it's all about building momentum. Okay, I'm on to slide 21 here. Forgive me, I could probably spend all day on this one, and I promise I won't. I'll pick out a few ones. So ultimately, research will help. If we look at your local authorities remaining sustainable, I mean, that's a huge thing to say, but you could boil it down to saying that it will help any organisation communicate impact to either maintain things that need maintaining, or to stimulate growth where it's needed. but also the research might actually be in itself about how you become more sustainable in certain areas. Communities being better supported, everything you all do, regardless of your role or how many days a week you do it or where you do it, everything you do is linked to our communities. And sometimes it might be difficult to see those connections. Sometimes I totally get that. You know, I said at the beginning, I've got a split role. In a nutshell, I spend half of my time on spreadsheets, half of my time in front of students, and sometimes it's hard to see the difference, the connection, between those two things. And that's one of the reasons that we're really emphasising the importance of reflection in research, so that you can see for yourselves and take the time to see how important that bit of research is. And we know that it's really possible to get bogged down in that sort of thing, but ultimately, if you are making evidence-based decisions, you will be improving the way that communities are worked with and how they're supported. So we've got create more effective and happier workforces. Again, like sustainability, the actual research that you do could be about that. It doesn't have to be about something that seems highly academic or sort of outside of where you are. It can be about your day-to-day processes. If you see something not working, or you see a team that are particularly unhappy at the moment, or something's been introduced that you're not quite sure where it's come from or what it's based on, this can be a route into finding out about that and how things work and solving problems. Increasing collaboration, we know that support and resources come along with that. Reducing risk around things, creating change and solving problems. Again, that doesn't have to be as big as it sounds, as we said earlier. And sometimes the most small-scale pieces of research can have the biggest impact because they make us think differently. Incremental change, and any change at all, really, is a good thing. We're seeing things that we've not seen before and doing things that we've not done before, and they're based on evidence, which can only be a good thing. The end point I'll just make, proving your points. Have you said something for so long and just felt like nobody is listening? Maybe that's because you need some, I want to say clout in my South Shields sort of term, but you need some evidence behind it. And having that robust data, that credible data and a really rigorous approach that you can demonstrate you've taken to get there, that just speaks volumes, and it can get you heard, and it can prove a point that maybe that you've been wanting to prove for some time. So it's making a case for something and moving things forward. And as we said, that's at every scale that matters. Okay, so slide 22, where research comes from. This is a slightly controversial thing, or so I thought. So I used to teach research skills. Well, I still teach research skills to apprentices, but I used to teach it in a way that it was all about the research question. It's all about that. You can't be personal with research. But on the side of that, I enjoy talking to people about their experiences and their emotions in dealing with things. And I believe the whole world is perceived by how we interact with it, and that actually life is made from those perceptions. Not great at putting people in boxes. Those two things kind of don't fit with each other, because I'm acknowledging the individuality on one side and then not on the other side. I used to suggest that you were separate from your research. It was all about the question, and that should drive the design of your research. But actually now things have been broken down so much in the background, it's easier to say it's a bit of both. We need to acknowledge that we're in this process. And yes, it has to be driven by need. And that if we do get to the point where we have a researchable research question that we want to answer, yes, that should drive the way that we design it. But we also need to think about what we're good at. What are we really skilled at? Fair enough, we might need to upskill in certain areas. But what are we going to do best at in trying to answer that question? we also need to think about doing something that interests us, because there's nothing worse than ending up in a piece of research that you're just not passionate about. It's not going to be good if you're not passionate about it and you're not genuinely interested in the topic. So something that really drives you. And then the bit in the middle that's quite interesting. I suppose what I found most interesting doing my research was that this came from a paper in 1987, and yet it was only up until a few years ago that everybody was sort of in a research camp. Really, you either liked numbers or you liked words. You believed in putting people in categories or you didn't. And that's all been broken down quite recently, really. But so I was over the moon when I found this paper. But anyway, the third thing that Chowdhury acknowledges is that we need to recognise the imperfections of real life research. And sometimes that's where the best bits are. We can't go into it expecting perfection. Otherwise, it's not just a huge disappointment, but you kind of don't see the full benefits of it. You can get so much out of it if you just go into it with a completely open mind, which can actually reduce a lot of the anxiety of starting a research project anyway. Okay, I'm moving on to slide 23 now. So most research is invisible. There's a bit of a parallel here between the situation that was facing education in the UK. There was a big drive in education a few years ago around the invisibility of research, that it's actually often there, it just doesn't get seen. It's embedded in policies and technologies and services. And there was a big push in education to change the culture around that, to realise the full value. Invisible use is unlikely to create the kind of benefits that are really claimed around using research. So we're talking about changing the way that people think, changing what they actually do when you're out in practice. Those benefits aren't going to come if we don't really recognise everywhere that the research is. So we know that it will be there in pockets in what you do all of the time. We're just here to hopefully flesh that out and do more with it. Also, the benefits are as much personal as they are professional. Even if the person doing the research recognises that that's what it is, there's still a limit to how you get a sense of achievement out of that and the confidence you get from it and whether you're motivated to do it again if nobody around you actually recognises that. So it's getting all of that stuff right under the spotlight. Okay, I'm moving on to slide 24. Which I'm not going to talk about. I'm just going to read it out because it's just such a lovely testimony from somebody who had completed their undergraduate research studies. So this is from somebody who's published online called Riley Wilson. Research is a multi-layered experience that can often be a roller coaster of emotions. I've felt highs and lows while conducting research, but I truly would not be the person I am today without it. Research has given me many things, but the most significant thing I gain from this experience is something that cannot be taught in a classroom. Confidence. Confidence to try new protocols and research unknown questions. Confidence to defend my results against naysayers. Confidence to gather everything I learned in my research project and use it to apply for graduate research school. I've grown into my own individual with a passion, all thanks to research. And that's someone who isn't actually a full-time researcher. I just think that's beautiful in the way that he's put that. It's not just really eloquent. I would think that it resonates with anybody who's taken on a research project at any level. It can be a little bit isolating sometimes, and it can be a roller coaster of emotions, but that includes a lot of massive highs and massive senses of achievement. And, you know, it really is personal as well as professional when we're looking at the benefits. So slide 25, career development, thinking about that personal and professional development as well. You can demonstrate the value of you. You can demonstrate the value of your role. You can demonstrate your department, your directorate, your local authority, whatever level you want to look at it and whatever level of responsibility you have. It's about as well, though, autonomy and a sense of achievement. You feeling that you have control over something. That sense of autonomy links really strongly into motivation. And we're not just talking about motivation for research, talking about motivation for everything. Reflection and evaluation for personal development as much as professional development. We're talking about demonstrating rigour and demonstrating adherence to process and being able to follow things through with procedures, being able to design those procedures. We're talking about demonstrating your commitment, not just to a particular cause or a particular group of people, but to your organisation. Demonstrating the values that the local authorities might have. Demonstrating ownership and leadership. So those things could all be used for career progression, but they might not, and they're valuable on their own anyway. So slide 26 is making Nicola smile because I threw that in there at the last moment. I went to Harry Potter World a few weeks ago and I wasn't obsessed before I got there, but I am now. So this is about, we're turning really cheesy now, getting on the research train with us. It really is kind of a little bit magical. And I'm sorry, I really do think this. I'm very passionate about it. As long as it is all of those things that we talked about earlier, if it is valuable to people, and if it does have real world impact, and if it is credible, and if everybody is along for the ride and everybody recognises what you're trying to achieve, it can be quite magical. Sometimes you got so much so that you can't actually explain how you got to a certain point. You can be inspired by anything, but then just taking what hopefully the information we're going to give to you and making things a little bit more formal and a little bit more on the radar. Yes, we'll all be on the train together. Couldn't help myself, sorry. And that's it really from us. The next bit is actually sort of a labour of love of mine that took a different turn at the last moment. What we'd like you to do is have the opportunity to just think about where you are now. Not necessarily what kind of person you are, but how you might approach research and the way that you look at the world, the things that you like to do. And so there are a few questions in this survey. I hope this QR code on the screen works. I'll put the link in the chat now, if not. And it's just a way of you understanding where you are now, so that later on, hopefully, we'll come back to this in another session and we'll look at the data that we've got. It's all anonymous, so don't, oh, brilliant. Thank you, Rachel. Yes, so it's all anonymous. Don't worry about anything like that. It's for you. And then we'll come back to it, hopefully in a few weeks or a few months' time, and you'll be able to see some development or some changes. And it's just really a thinking point and a talking point. And hopefully we can look at it as well on the level of, this is generally where everybody is. Do we have a really, really mixed bag of perspectives? Or is everybody kind of in the same area? Maybe we need to look at the training that we've got coming up and the conversations we're going to have to reflect that. So it would be really lovely if you could fill that out. There isn't a deadline on it or anything like that. You just use it as you see fit. But we will be checking in to see, you know, who's saying what. And I hope you